Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. Donald Trump is already beginning to build relationships with his foreign allies. There are many indications that the new American president will move away from the pro-German policies of the Biden-Harris duo and will want Central Europe to play a larger role in the European Union. Poland comes to the fore here, as it did during his first term. Donald Trump has already spoken on the telephone to Polish President Andrzej Duda.
Last Tuesday, Americans elected him as their leader. Yesterday, Donald Trump called President Andrzej Duda and sent his wishes to the Polish people on Independence Day. He also asked to thank Poles for their support, especially those Poles living in the United States who voted in the elections. He said he knows that the vast majority of Poles in the United States, the Polish community, the so-called Polish Americans, voted for him. He said he is extremely grateful for that and that he remembers about Poland. Donald Trump has invited Andrzej Duda for a meeting before the president-elect even takes office. The time and place are yet to be determined, but both leaders have already identified topics for conversation. Security issues, issues of economic cooperation between Poland and the United States, upcoming events that will take place, starting with the Polish presidency, through the Trilateral Summit, which will take place in Warsaw, and in which President Donald Trump participated in 2017. We will also talk about the situation in Ukraine, of course. Donald Trump's previous term in office was full of numerous meetings with the Polish president, building strong Polish-American ties, economic and military cooperation. It was during Donald Trump's term of office that American soldiers strengthened NATO's eastern flank, and our country gained access to the most modern equipment produced by the American armament industry.
And it's an honor to have you here,
personal
Mr.
relations are also perfectly important, and the mutual respect between the two leaders was evident during every visit and conversation. Both First Ladies, Agata Duda and Melania Trump, are in a similar relationship. President Duda is not only a proven partner, but is also a friend of Donald Trump. Donald Trump rarely establishes such relationships with foreign leaders. Both men have proven themselves on a win-win basis. That is, issues for Poland and America were one. And these proven 4 years have later moved on to more personal relations. Trump's visit to Warsaw at the invitation of Andrzej Duda also went down in history. The American president spoke beautifully about Poland and the Poles.
Poland is the geographic heart of Europe, but more importantly, in the Polish people, we see the soul of Europe. Your nation is great because your spirit is great, and your spirit is strong. For 2 centuries, Poland suffered constant and brutal attacks. But while Poland could be invaded and occupied, and its borders even erased from the map, it could never be erased from history or from your hearts.
The good relationship between the two presidents also bore fruit as Donald Trump struggled to return to the White House. President Andrzej Duda visited the candidate at the time at the Trump Tower in New York. Donald Trump also gave a special interview to Republika there.
Well, I love the Polish people. As you know, I was in Warsaw and made a speech, and the relationship with Polish people has just been extraordinary, and I hope they get out and vote for me, because the other side does not like the Polish people. They don't like religion. They don't like anything there.
Not surprisingly, Poles with voting rights in America strongly bet on Donald Trump, who, in his election campaign, spoke of values close to our countrymen: faith, family, security, and the economy. The votes of Polish Americans also tipped the scales of victory to Congress, where Republicans are one step away from full power.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country.
The start of Donald Trump's second term coincides with the end of Andrzej Duda's presidency. What will Polish-American relations look like now? Much depends on the outcome of Poland's presidential election in May. Civic Platform candidate Radosław Sikorski has repeatedly insulted Donald Trump, as has Sikorski's wife, columnist Anna Applebaum. Rafał Trzaskowski, who has presidential ambitions, met Alexander Soros, the son of George Soros, who has carried out many media attacks on Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a crook, and if he gains power, he will become a dictator. Trump is a threat to the world. Donald Trump will shatter the unity of Europe. Trust is the foundation of strong international relations, and good relations with the United States is a guarantee of security for all Poles.
American media are reporting that President-elect Donald Trump has spoken to Vladimir Putin. According to journalists overseas, he was supposed to warn the Russian dictator against escalation of the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin denies this, saying there was no conversation, and President Trump's entourage does not comment on the matter. What is at stake is one of the most important games of geopolitical chess that is about to begin.
Here, no changes to see. Ukrainian cities burn after airstrikes, just like before the US election. Soldiers fight and die just the same. Even so, I hope something will change. In particular, I hope that the changes will be as follows: an increase in the supply of armaments, ammunition, new weapons, so that we can still end this war with victory. This request is addressed to this very man. He bears the brunt of this pressure. As the leader of the strongest power in the free world, he has the tools to influence the course of Ukrainian history and much more. The problem is that Donald Trump has been called pro-Russian by his opponents and part of the mainstream media for months. They warned that he would sell out the West to Putin and lead to the collapse of NATO. President Zelensky was one of the first world leaders to have the opportunity to speak with President-elect Trump on the phone. It was a good and frank conversation, during which they exchanged thoughts on further cooperation. This is the first rebuke of alleged pro-Russianism. The second are the first appointments to Donald Trump's administration. Both the proposed Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor are extremely anti-Russian politicians in the Republican Party. Marco Rubio has made a name for himself in his political career as a strong opponent of the United States leaving NATO, and has even led all sorts of legislative efforts to make it more difficult for any president to leave NATO in the future. And Michael Waltz, on the other hand, is known for opposing the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. Trump, even without such a background, has a clear plan for Ukraine. The key is supposed to be diplomacy. He keeps arguing that negotiations are the only way out. According to US media, he has already spoken to Putin and warned the Russians against further escalation of the conflict. According to experts, Republicans will want to start negotiations, but not on Russian terms. Moreover, they are ready to take a completely different path if Putin does not agree to concessions. Firstly, it will be the case that all that has already been sent will be able to be used without restrictions. And secondly, it is very possible that, in addition, all sorts of technologies will be provided that will allow for the destruction of systems inside Russia. And this alone makes the narrative of Trump's pro-Russianism sound absurd on its face, especially since the Kremlin denies any talks with the president-elect. This could either indicate that they really didn't happen, and that someone put out a false rumor to test the world's reaction. It could also indicate, if it did take place, that it went very badly, and therefore Moscow prefers to deny it, rather than talk about the details.
Day 993 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The invaders continue to attack civilian targets. They are destroying critical infrastructure in a bid to weaken the fighting spirit of the Ukrainians, especially as winter approaches. On the front lines, the Russians are stepping up their attacks with no regard for casualties, as North Korean mercenaries would rather die in Ukraine than live in their own communist country. A five-story building in Kryvyi Rih, the hometown of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, was hit by a Russian ballistic missile. At least 6 people have been killed. Unfortunately, this morning we pulled out the bodies of 3 children from under the rubble. Yesterday we found the body of their mother. It is a great tragedy for this family. We have 14 injured people. Another 5 people were killed in a drone attack on civilian buildings in Mykolaiv in Zaporizhia. I heard the sound of an engine and then an explosion. The windows blew out. Then rescues came and helped us to get out. The Ukrainian Air Force shot down 2 missiles and 39 of the 70 drones launched by Russia overnight. One of the rockets hit a dam on a reservoir in the village of Kurakova. This poses a serious threat to residents of nearby villages. And on the front lines, the Russians are approaching Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region, a strategic road and rail hub with a large thermal power plant. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that Ukrainian troops are holding back Russian attempts to regain their territory in the Kursk region, which the Ukrainians seized this summer. Our people are tying up a rather large group of Russian troops there, 50,000 soldiers of the occupation army. Because of our Kursk operation, they cannot be diverted to other offensive directions. The Russians are supported by several thousand North Korean troops. Zelensky continues to urge his allies to provide more long-range weapons and allow them to be used to attack Russian territory. Strikes by our forces against Russian armorers have reduced the amount of artillery used by the occupying forces, which is noticeable at the front. Therefore, we need further decisions from our partners on long-range missiles. Moscow launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Since then, nearly 600 Ukrainian children have been killed and nearly 1,700 wounded in barbaric attacks. That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.